I died once. Well, technically, someone betrayed me and I died. But that's not the point, at least not yet. This time around, I had a head start. One day. One tiny, miraculous day before New York turned into a walking nightmare. The alarm clock on my nightstand blared obnoxiously at 7:03 a.m. The same time it did in my past life when Sarah broke up with me over text while eating brunch with some guy named, well, I don't even remember his name because he wasn't worth remembering. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and muttered to the empty room, "All right, George. New life. Don't screw it up." I got out of bed, put on my worn-out leather jacket, and headed to the corner coffee shop. The streets were quiet, suspiciously quiet for Manhattan. A chill ran down my spine, but I shrugged it off. Probably just early morning ghosts of overpriced rent, I joked to myself. At the coffee shop, I bumped into someone who didn't exist in my past life, Sophie. She was juggling a laptop, a giant cup of coffee, and a backpack that looked like it contained the entire contents of the UN. She almost tripped over my foot. "Whoa, sorry," I said, catching her elbow. She laughed, and it wasn't the fake, polite kind. It was the kind that made the world feel like it wasn't about to fall apart. "Careful, or I'll start charging for emotional trauma caused by near collisions," she teased. I grinned. "I'll pay in coffee and terrible puns." And that's how it started. Somehow, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, Sophie and I exchanged a little spark of connection, while the city around us was blissfully unaware that it was about to get eaten alive by the walking dead. Later that day, I walked past a newsstand. The headlines made me do a double take. Mysterious virus outbreak in Lower Manhattan. Authorities cautious. Yep, there it was. My second chance life wasn't going to be ordinary. I had a chance to survive this, unlike last time. And more importantly, I was done letting people like Sarah dictate my fate. That evening, I went back to my apartment and started packing. Canned food, water, a baseball bat, because when in doubt, hit it until it stops moving, and my father's old hunting knife. I paused, staring at a photo of my past self smiling with Sarah. "You won't ruin this life," I whispered to the empty frame. "Not this time." Just then my phone buzzed. It was Sophie. "Sophie, hey, if the world goes to hell tomorrow, want to meet up, for science. And survival, mostly survival." I smiled, typing back. "George, absolutely. Meet you at the corner of 5th and 42nd. Bring that chaos backpack of yours." And that was the moment I realized something. Surviving the zombie apocalypse wasn't just about weapons or luck. It was about people. The right people. Tomorrow the city would burn. Zombies would roam. People would betray each other for the smallest scraps of food. And me? I was ready to face it all, but this time I'd do it for me, and maybe for Sophie too. As I lay down that night, I thought about my past life, about betrayal, about loss, and then I smiled. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "I write my own story." Little did I know, the first real test wasn't the zombies. It was going to be the people I thought I could trust. The city didn't wake up tomorrow, it screamed. I woke to the sound of distant sirens and the unmistakable, gut-churning groan of people who were no longer people. My instincts, honed from knowing what was coming, kicked in immediately. I grabbed my backpack, my bat, and my knife and bolted for the street. That's when I saw her, Sophie, in her chaos backpack glory, fending off a shuffling figure with a fire extinguisher. "Hey, over here," I shouted, waving my arms like an idiot. She looked up, eyes wide but alive with that spark I loved, and laughed, though it was more of a terrified squeak. "Took you long enough, mister. I'm finally gonna survive this time." I ran over, swung the bat with a satisfying crack, and the thing collapsed. Sophie caught her breath. "You're insane," she said, shaking her head. "Survivor's prerogative," I said, smirking. We moved together through the streets, dodging the newly turned and the panicking crowds. It was chaos, but somehow, amidst the screaming, there was a strange sense of clarity. People were showing who they really were, who could be trusted. "George, do you think we'll make it?" Sophie asked, voice small but steady. I looked at her, feeling something I hadn't in my past life, a protective, stubborn kind of hope. "We will, but only if we watch each other's backs. No heroes, no trust in strangers, just us." And that's when the first real betrayal hit. We found a small convenience store and decided to barricade ourselves inside. While Sophie scavenged food, I checked the perimeter. And then Sarah walked in. Well, not exactly Sarah. Some people never change, but she looked eerily familiar. "George," she called, smiling sweetly. "Didn't expect to see you here." I froze, gripping my bat. You survived." "Oh, I'm surviving," she said, her grin widening in a way that screamed trouble. "But maybe we can help each other." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Not this time, you lost your chance." Sophie stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Who is she?" "Past life trauma," I muttered, "and she has a taste for chaos." The moment Sarah, or whatever her name was this life, touched the food, the tension snapped. She tried to shove Sophie aside, grab supplies, and I didn't hesitate. I swung the bat, hard. She hit the ground, groaning, and I stood over her. "I don't do second chances," I said. Sophie shook her head, looking at me with a mix of awe and fear. "You're intense." "Survival makes you intense," I replied. "Trust me, I learned the hard way." As night fell, we made a plan. Shelter was temporary, food was scarce. And outside, the city's screams were only growing louder. But for the first time since being reborn, I felt in control. Sophie leaned against the wall. "You know, most people in this situation would be crying or screaming." I smirked. "Yeah, well, I've got practice." She smiled, and for a moment the apocalypse faded, just a little. But I knew the real battles weren't just the undead. They were coming, and they weren't always walking on two legs. Day 3. The city smelled like smoke, fear, and something worse, human greed. Sophie and I had moved from the convenience store to a more defensible spot, an old bookstore. Dusty shelves, broken windows, and the comforting weight of stories that no one would read for a long time. Perfect hideout. That's when we met them. A pair of survivors, Marcus, a lanky guy with glasses that kept slipping down his nose, and Lena, who carried herself like she'd fought 100 battles and probably had. "Hey, don't shoot," Marcus said nervously, raising his hands. "We just want food and shelter." I tightened my grip on the bat. "We don't share easily." Sophie stepped forward. "Wait, maybe we can cooperate. There's strength in numbers." I shot her a look. "Or there's weakness." "George, relax," Sophie said, rolling her eyes. "You're too good at scaring people." After a tense standoff and a few awkward introductions, we decided to team up. 2 heads or 4 were better than 1, especially when the city outside was overrun with the undead. That afternoon we scavenged together. Marcus proved surprisingly resourceful. He could pick a lock like a pro. Lena had no problem smashing zombies' heads with a crowbar, and she did it with style. "So, George, what's your story?" Marcus asked as we took a break in a half-collapsed coffee shop. I looked out the window, watching a horde shuffle past. "Died once, betrayed, reborn. Basically, I've got a head start on life this time, and I don't trust easily." Lena smirked. "Sounds like you've got some baggage." "Yeah," I muttered. "Baggage that might save our lives." Sophie nudged me. "Don't scare them too much." Then came the first real test. A scream echoed down the street. Lena bolted toward it without hesitation. Marcus froze. Sophie grabbed my arm. "Let's go," she said, eyes fierce. "Together." We ran into a group of scavengers. Not zombies, real people. And they weren't friendly. "Give us your supplies," one shouted, "or die." I didn't hesitate. Sophie swung her backpack like a wrecking ball. Lena smashed a crowbar into a guy's knee. "Marcus, Well, he yelled, which somehow distracted another one long enough for me to knock him out. It was messy, brutal, but when the dust settled, we were alive and still standing. Sophie looked at me, eyes wide. You didn't hold back. Survival doesn't care about politeness, I said, wiping blood from my bat. Then came the betrayal I didn't see coming. Marcus quietly pocketed some of the supplies while we weren't looking, not out of necessity, greed. The city was testing everyone and he failed. I caught him later, hiding behind a crumbling wall. Really? I asked, voice calm but deadly. He stammered. I didn't know if we'd make it, I thought. Thought what? I cut in. That you betray us and still sleep at night. Sophie joined me, crossing her arms. We risked our lives for you, Marcus. That's not how this works. He lowered his head, shame written all over him. I'm sorry, I just... Save it, I said. We decide who survives and you almost didn't. Sophie shook her head. People, they're complicated. I smirked, though it didn't reach my eyes. Yeah, and some are just dangerous. That night, as we fortified the bookstore, Sophie leaned against me. You're hard on people. Not hard, realistic, I replied. I've learned the hard way who to trust. She smiled softly. I think that's why I trust you. I looked down at her, warmth blooming in the middle of chaos. For the first time, I believed we could survive this together. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The zombies weren't the only monsters out there. The morning started like any other, eerily quiet, too quiet. Sophie and I were on the rooftop of the bookstore, surveying the streets below. Marcus was sulking somewhere in a corner, trying to look useful. Lena was sharpening her crowbar, humming some tune that didn't belong in a city about to die. Something's coming, I said, squinting at the horizon. Sophie tilted her head. Zombies. Worse, I muttered. The city always saves its big show for last. I wasn't kidding. From every street, every alley, the groaning mass appeared. A horde, hundreds, maybe thousands, moving like a tide of death, and in the middle of them people, survivors, looters, not all of them friendly. Lena whistled. That's a lot of nope. We scrambled down the fire escape, grabbing what we could. Marcus tried to block a street corner with a makeshift barricade. It lasted 5 minutes. George, Sophie shouted, they're breaking through. I ran, bats swinging, instincts kicking in like a well-oiled machine. Sophie stayed close, throwing punches, swinging her backpack like a medieval flail. Lena was a whirlwind of destruction. Marcus, well, he ran. And then it happened. One of the looters, someone I vaguely remembered from earlier, lunged at Sophie. I didn't think. I swung my bat, connecting with a sickening crack. She screamed. I froze. Sophie. She wasn't dead, just tangled up with debris, knocked off balance. I yanked her up, heart hammering. You okay? I asked. She glared at me. Do I look okay? I laughed nervously. You'll live, probably. Then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. Marcus wasn't helping. He was sneaking off with some supplies again. But this time it wasn't petty. This time it was critical. Our weapons, food, and first aid were gone. Marcus, I roared, grabbing his collar. He froze. I didn't think you'd. Think, I barked. We almost died out there. You left Sophie. Sophie, brushing herself off, added, you literally ran with the loot while the rest of us were trying not to become zombie snacks. Marcus stammered, tears welling up. I thought I could survive. I let go, my chest heaving. Survival doesn't mean stealing from the people who save you. He hung his head. Lena muttered under her breath, good riddance if you ask me. We regrouped with what little we had, fortifying the bookstore as best we could. Sophie pressed her forehead against mine. George, we're alive. That's what matters. I held her close. Yeah, but surviving doesn't mean winning, not yet. As night fell, the horde roamed the streets below. Their groans echoed like the city's heartbeat, And in the darkness, I realized something terrifying. I was ready to fight zombies. I was ready to fight people. But was I ready for the next kind of betrayal? Because someone I trusted, was going to make me question everything. And when that time came, there would be no going back. The city smelled like smoke and blood, and it was only getting worse. Sophie and I had survived the initial horde. Lena was still a whirlwind of destruction, and Marcus was mostly useless, but somehow still clinging to life. We'd taken refuge in an old subway station, the walls streaked with grime, graffiti, and desperate warnings from people long gone. Sophie sat cross-legged, cleaning her knife, while I checked the barricades. "You know," I said, "if someone told me last week that I'd be living in a subway with zombies above and people worse than zombies around me, I'd have laughed." She smirked. "Welcome to your second chance at life, George, make it count." I frowned. Second chance, yeah, but sometimes second chances come with baggage. Sophie tilted her head, like. I didn't answer, not yet. The rumble came before the groans. A massive group, zombies, yes, but bigger, stronger, hungrier. The kind that made you wish you stayed in bed. We prepared for battle. Lena sharpened her crowbar with precision that made me nervous. Marcus, he grabbed a pipe and muttered something about survival. Sophie stood next to me, eyes blazing. "This is going to hurt," I said, and she nodded. "Yeah, but we survived together, that's what matters." The fight was brutal. I swung my bat, feeling the sickening impact of each blow. Sophie was a whirlwind at my side, precise, deadly, and terrifyingly good at staying alive. Lena tore through anything that moved. Marcus, he panicked. I had to drag him through the chaos more than once. And then, amidst the screams and gnashing teeth, I saw her. Not Sarah, not anyone I recognized from before, someone new. A woman trapped by the horde screaming for help. Sophie noticed too. "Go," I shouted. "We can't save everyone." But Sophie, without hesitation, charged into the horde. I ran after her, heart in my throat, swinging, dodging, pushing through the chaos. Somehow together we pulled her out, bloodied, bruised, terrified, but alive. We collapsed in a corner, breathing hard. Sophie looked at me. "You saved her, but you hesitated." I frowned. Hesitation isn't weakness, it's survival instincts, calculated risk. She shook her head. "You're human, George, that's why I trust you." Later, we sat quietly. The subway echoed with distant groans, but for a moment it was just us. Sophie leaned against me. "You're different than the last life, you know. You care even when it's dangerous, even when it hurts." I let out a short laugh. "Maybe, or maybe I just know now who's worth fighting for." She smiled softly. "Then fight with me, George, not just for survival, for something more." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I will, but I can't promise it'll be easy. The world, it doesn't make it easy." As the night deepened, the shadows of the past whispered. Betrayal wasn't just something we faced out there. It was something that could strike from within. Someone we trusted might change everything. And when that moment came, it would test everything. Our bond, our morals, and the very definition of survival. I clenched my fists. "Whatever comes next," I muttered, "I won't be the same George who died before. This time, I'll choose who I become." And for the first time in this reborn life, I realized that surviving the apocalypse wasn't enough. I wanted to live. Really live. The city was changing, not just because of the undead, they were constant, but because people revealed themselves in moments of panic. Some were heroes, some monsters, some both. We were in a crumbling warehouse, scavenging for supplies. Sophie moved like a shadow, silent and precise. Lena was perched atop a pile of crates, scanning for trouble. Marcus, predictably, lingered near the entrance, nervously glancing around. "Something off," Sophie whispered, brushing blood from her knife. I nodded. "Yeah, I feel it too. Keep your guard up." Hours passed in tense silence. Then it happened. Marcus disappeared. Not into the shadows, into the horde. We heard it first, the crash of crates, a scream, and then groaning. I bolted toward the noise, Sophie right behind me. And there he was, Marcus, dragging a pile of our supplies deeper into the building, right into the middle of a zombie swarm. "Marcus," I shouted, "what the hell are you doing?" I need it. I can't survive like this," he yelled, fear and desperation cracking his voice. "You could have died," Sophie screamed, swinging her backpack at the nearest zombie. "You almost got us killed." The horde closed in. I grabbed Marcus by the collar, yanking him out of the way just as a zombie lunged for him. Breath ragged, I shoved him against the wall. "This isn't just about you anymore. We survive together, or we die alone." He hung his head. I didn't mean." "Save it," I snapped. "Actions speak louder than words." Sophie stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "George, we can't hate him. Not yet. He's scared." I looked at her, conflicted. Scared doesn't excuse betrayal. It never does. We managed to barricade the warehouse again, but the tension was palpable. Marcus didn't speak. Lena didn't speak. Only Sophie and I moved with a quiet understanding. Survival wasn't enough. Trust was earned. And once broken, it was nearly impossible to rebuild. Later, when the night grew still, Sophie and I sat on a pile of crates. "You're so angry," she said softly. "Not angry," I corrected, staring at the distant city lights. "Focused. Every second counts. Every choice matters. One mistake, one betrayal, and we're done." She leaned against me. "I get it, but you can't carry it all alone. Not even you, George." I sighed. "I know, but it's not just about survival anymore. It's about who we become in the fire. The city, the horde, the people who survive it, they're different, stronger, or worse." Her hand found mine. "Then let's be the first kind, together." For the first time, I let myself imagine a future beyond the apocalypse. Not just surviving, but really living, laughing, loving. But in the shadows, I knew something was coming. Something that would shake the very foundation of everything I'd fought for. And when it came, I wouldn't just face the undead. I'd face a truth that would change me forever. The city had become unrecognizable. Fires burned in streets where skyscrapers once gleamed. The groans of the undead echoed through empty avenues, mixing with the wails of those who had survived, and the screams of those who hadn't. Sophie and I crouched behind the remains of a crumbling wall, surveying the chaos. Lena had gone to secure some supplies, and Marcus was no longer worth worrying about. His repeated betrayals had finally earned him exile, from us and from my patients. "You ready for this?" Sophie whispered, her eyes fierce in the flickering firelight. I swallowed hard. I don't know if anyone's ever truly ready, but yeah, let's end this. And then I saw her. Not the horde, not some random survivor. Her, Sarah, my past life betrayer, inexplicably alive, standing at the top of the street like some queen of ruin. She held a pistol, aimed not at the undead, but at us. "George," she said, voice silky and calm, "I knew you'd be here. You always were predictable." I gritted my teeth. "Sarah, you don't get to play games anymore." "Oh, but I do," she smirked. "I've survived this long, haven't I? And now you'll make the final choice, me or them, your precious little group." I glanced at Sophie. Her grip on my arm was steady, unwavering. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with certainty. "You're not my life anymore," I said, loud enough for Sarah to hear. "I don't care what I did for you. You betrayed me once and you'd do it again. I choose them. I choose her," I added, glancing at Sophie, my resolve solidifying. Sarah laughed, a sound that made the air around us colder. Bold words. "Let's see if you can survive them." The horde surged forward. Sarah's distraction had drawn them toward us. Chaos exploded. Sophie and I fought side by side, Lena tearing through zombies like a force of nature. Amid the screaming, the gunshots, and the falling debris, I realized something profound. Survival wasn't about avoiding danger. It was about choosing what and who was worth surviving for. And then it hit me. In the heat of the battle, Sarah lunged toward Sophie. Reflex took over. I intercepted her, wrestling the gun away, and for a brief, harrowing second, I held her against the wall. "Goodbye, Sarah," I said, voice shaking but not with fear. I shoved her toward the horde. The undead did what they were meant to do. I turned to Sophie, breath ragged, hands trembling, and she threw her arms around me. "You did it," she whispered. "You survived us, me, yourself." I closed my eyes, letting the weight of everything, the betrayals, the battles, the choices, wash over me. I had lost people, yes. I had almost lost myself. But I had also found something that made all of it worth it: trust, love, and the power to choose who I became. The city was still burning. The undead still roamed. But for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was alive. Sophie pulled back, smiling through the grime and tears. "What now?" I grinned for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. "Now we live, and we rebuild together." And as we stepped out into the chaos, hand in hand, I knew one thing. Life didn't give second chances often, but when it did, you had better grab them with everything you had. Because this time, I wasn't letting go. I had never been a hero, never even thought of myself as someone who could survive in a world that had gone completely insane. And yet, here I was, crouched behind a crumbling wall in the middle of Manhattan, listening to George whisper instructions like he was born to lead in chaos. I glanced at him, his jaw set, eyes scanning the streets for the next wave of the undead. He was magnetic, terrifyingly capable, impossibly stubborn, and somehow my anchor in this storm. I had been drawn to him since that first day in the coffee shop, the one before the world fell apart, and watching him now I understood why. He wasn't perfect. He was broken in ways I couldn't fully see, but he was alive, fierce, determined. The fight that morning had nearly killed us all. Marcus. Well, Marcus had finally proven himself untrustworthy again, and we'd barely escaped with our lives. Lena was shouting, swinging her crowbar, laughing in the middle of death like it was a game. And me? I was learning to survive through sheer stubbornness and the terrifying comfort of knowing George had my back. He caught my eye, and for a second everything else faded. The horde, the fire, the screams, they all melted away. It was just us, me and him. "You okay?" he asked, voice low but steady, not condescending, just steady. I nodded, brushing dirt from my sleeve. "I will be, as long as you're around." He smirked. "Good answer, that's what I want to hear." But it wasn't just about survival anymore. Watching him fight, protect, and make impossible choices made me realize I was falling for him. Not just in the way people fall in normal lives, with coffee dates and shared Netflix passwords. I was falling for him in the fire of chaos, in the grit and grime, in the moments where death stared us in the face and we still chose to fight together. Later, when we finally rested in the subway, I sat across from him and Lena, Marcus hiding in the shadows somewhere. I watched George sharpen his bat, methodical, focused, and I thought about all the things he had survived before I even met him. All the betrayals, all the mistakes, all the losses. And here he was, still fighting. Not just for himself, but for me, for us. I wanted to say it out loud, but the words felt heavy in the air. "George," I started, my voice quiet. He looked up. "Yeah. I trust you," I said finally, "completely." His eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment the world outside didn't matter. "And I trust you, Sophie, more than anyone." It wasn't romance that had brought us here. It was survival, it was chaos, it was fire. But somehow, amidst the ruin, we were learning something new. Hope. That even in a world gone mad, even when betrayal lurked around every corner, and even when the city itself seemed intent on killing us, we could find something worth holding onto. I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of the world ease just a little. "Promise me something," I murmured. "Anything," he said. "Promise me that no matter what happens, we face it together, always." He pressed his forehead to mine, smiling wryly. "Deal, But you better keep up, I don't slow down for anyone. And in that moment I realized something terrifyingly wonderful. I wasn't just surviving. I was alive, truly alive, because with him I could be. The apocalypse could rage. People could betray, zombies could swarm, the city could crumble. But here, in this chaos, in this fire with George, I had found my home. And I wasn't letting go.